Welcome to part 2 of the third module overview. Second act of the mind, judgment. Judgments are expressed in propositions. All propositions are declarative statements. They state that something is or is not the case. As such, the following are not propositions: interrogative sentences or questions, imperative sentences like commands, exclamatory sentences like ouch, Lord Almighty, performative sentences such as I pronounce you husband and wife. All propositions have a certain structure. All propositions are composed of a subject and a predicate. The predicate says something about the subject. Socrates is ugly, for example. Ugly is said about Socrates, the subject. As a result, a proposition is not the same thing as an equation. 2 plus 2 equals 4 can also be expressed as 4 equals 2 plus 2. But God is love is not the same proposition as love is God. Kinds of propositions. There are simple propositions. Categorical propositions are these. That is, they simply state what is or is not the case. LaSalle students are good kids. That is a categorical proposition. But you also have compound propositions, such as hypothetical. If it rains, then the game will be canceled. Disjunctive. Either it rains or the game is canceled. Conjunctive. It is both raining and the game is being canceled. Propositions and truth. As we noted above, propositions are the place where truth happens. Only propositions can be true or false. Terms can only be clear or unclear, or ambiguous or exact. Whereas arguments can, as we'll see later, be only valid or invalid. But only propositions can be true or false. And this is because only propositions assert whether something is the case or not. What is the locus of truth? Where does it occur? Truth resides only in judgments, not in concepts or arguments, as I just stated. Nevertheless, things are true to the extent that they conform to their nature or to the excellence proper to them. We can say that this is true money, but that is counterfeit. This is a true original Van Gogh, but that is a copy. He is true to his promises. John is a true craftsman. In all these examples, we have a conformity of a thing to its nature, as known by the mind. Logical truth is just the inverse of this. It is the conformity of the mind to the thing. Thus, Aristotle defines truth. If a man says of what is that it is, or of what is not that it is not, he speaks to truth. But if he says of what is not that it is, or of what is that it is not, he does not speak the truth. Thus, telling the truth means telling it like it is. Truth is conformity of the mind to reality, of thought to the thing. There are 4 kinds of categorical propositions. Every proposition has its matter, or content, and a form. The matter of a proposition is its 2 terms, the subject and predicate. The matter of a proposition almost never changes. The form, however, does change. The form of a proposition can express the quantity or quality of a proposition. The quantity refers to whether a proposition refers to all of a certain subject, universal, or only some of a certain subject, particular. The quality refers to whether we are affirming something of a subject, affirmative, or negating something of a subject, negative. Hence, we have 4 different kinds of possible categorical propositions. There is the universal affirmative proposition, all men are mortal. Universal negative proposition, no men are mortal. Particular affirmative proposition, some men are mortal. Particular negative proposition, some men are not mortal. Note that we don't have any singular propositions in this scheme. If you remember, a singular proposition refers to an individual, such as Socrates, and Socrates is ugly. For the purposes of critical thinking, however, these are treated as universal propositions. So all of Socrates, or all Socrates, is that which is ugly, or he who is ugly. Notice that the 4 different types of propositions are labeled with particular letters, A, E, I, and O. These come from the Latin terms affirmo, I affirm, and nego, I negate or I deny. And these, of course, are the vowels within those 2 verbs. So affirmo you get A, which is universal affirmative, and I, particular affirmative. Whereas from nego, N-E-G-O, you get E and O, universal negative, and particular negative propositions. The structure and relation of subject to predicate in propositions can be illustrated using Euler circles, named after the famous 18th century Swiss mathematician Leonhard Euler. Thus, an A proposition, all S is P, looks like this, diagrammed with Euler circles. All lawyers are crooks. So here you have S, lawyers, and P, which is the set of crooks. And as you see, the subject, lawyers, is part of the larger set of crooks, or people who are dishonest. In an E proposition, no S is P, or no lawyers are crooks, looks something like this. So as you can see, the set of lawyers, S, is completely separate from the set of crooks, P. In the proposition, some lawyers are crooks, we have this. Of course, they overlap, but not completely. As you see, some, S, are within the circle of P. That is, some lawyers are within the set of crooks, but not all. And in O propositions, some S are not P. We also have a similar situation, except the subject, lawyers, is put outside the circle P. Of course, if you look at the illustrations in your book, these are completed by a dotted line. So unfortunately, I could not do this for the PowerPoint. Translating ordinary language statements into standard form propositions takes a bit of practice and can be a bit tricky. Many of these, and most ordinary language statements, are pretty straightforward. LaSalle students are good kids is pretty easy. All LaSalle students are good kids. Right? No, LaSalle students aren't terrorists can be easily translated into no LaSalle student is a terrorist. But sometimes we have to work at translating these ordinary language statements into standard form propositions. So you can say, whenever I go to the ball game, the Phillies win. We can translate that into something. All times that I go to the Phillies are times when the Phillies win. So there we have. We make sure that we have two sets of terms. We have a subject and we have a clear predicate. Right? Gas giants are super. Gas giants are super hot stars. Right? There we say all gas giants are those things or those objects that are super hot. Right? So notice we're making sure that it falls into that pattern or that form or structure. This is something that we will practice in our web conference and go through some exercises to do so. Here, I'll just note some of the tricky propositions that Peter Kreeft notes in his book and quickly go through them, but we can also do them in more detail in our web conference. Exclusive propositions, which begin with the word only. These propositions can be translated either as A or E propositions. Only LaSalle students are permitted in the library. So you can say, no non-LaSalle students are those permitted in the library, or all no non-LaSalle students are permitted in the library. Accepted propositions begin with all except. These propositions really say two things and should be broken down into two propositions. All except LaSalle students are permitted in the faculty lounge. So all those who are not LaSalle students are those permitted into the faculty lounge, or no LaSalle students are those permitted in the faculty lounge. It breaks down into those two propositions. Indesignative propositions have no word to mark the quantity, and thus we have to intuit whether a universal or particular judgment is being made. I've used a couple of examples of this. LaSalle students are good kids. Here, I think it's pretty reasonable to infer that they mean all. LaSalle students are not terrorists. This, it's reasonable to conclude that we mean no. No LaSalle students are terrorists. There are also more specific quantifiers. Few, many, most, a small quantity of, and a fairly large percentage of can all be expressed by some. Exact numbers are trickier, though they are usually expressed by all. Few and a few. The second clearly means some. A few LaSalle students are geniuses. Clearly means some LaSalle students are geniuses. The first is a bit trickier. It seems to imply two statements. There are other quantifiers. Every, each, everyone, anyone, whoever, any, everything, one who, that which, anything, all mean all. And temporal quantifiers, which I've referred to already, always means all, never means no. Sometimes or occasionally means some. So, I never go down to the shore during the summer. No time during the summer is a time that I go down to the shore. That can be translated in that way. I sometimes go down to the shore during the summer. Some times during the summer are times that I go down to the shore, and so forth. Distribution of terms. The importance of this concept of critical thinking will emerge as we look at the rules of inference, which will occur in the upcoming weeks. The term is either distributed or undistributed. A distributed term refers to all the members of a certain class. An undistributed term refers to only some members of a certain class. This, I think, is pretty straightforward. For the subjects of universal propositions, this is easy. In all SSP, the subject is distributed because it refers to all the members of that class. All LaSalle students are good kids. LaSalle students is a distributed term. In no SSP, no LaSalle students are terrorists. The subject is distributed because it again refers to all members of that class. No LaSalle students, every one of them, or none of them, not one of them, is a terrorist. Again, for the subjects of particular propositions, this is easy. All subjects are undistributed. Some SRP, some LaSalle students are geniuses. The subject is undistributed because it refers to only some members of that class. Ditto for some S are not P. Some LaSalle students are not geniuses. Things are more tricky for the predicate, however, but a look at the Euler circles will help discover the rule here. Thus, the predicate of an affirmative proposition is always undistributed. All LaSalle students are good kids. Good kids is undistributed because that class is left indefinite. All good kids, we're not referring to all good kids here. We're just, in a sense, referring to some good kids are LaSalle students. The predicate of a negative proposition is always distributed, and when we go back to this later, we will explain why when we look at more closely at syllogisms and deductive arguments. For now, this concludes the overview of Chapter 5, Second Act of the Mind, Judgment. Thank you.